What's going on, boys? Today we are talking ISTPs. Not how to meet them, not how to type them, just some observations and categorizations. So, the first thing to note about ISTPs I think people miss is their connection with the timeline. INTPs have everything all up in their heads, all webbed out and stranded about. ISTPs are more like if the timeline, past, present, and future, were a rope, ISTPs are an additional strand that has attached itself and interwoven itself into that rope. I will sort ISTPs into three types, but all ISTPs seem connected with history and the human timeline. Symbolism from those dead cultures, or suspicions about the ways those cultures have affected us and will affect cultures in the future. So, the first sort of ISTP we will call the soldier. You might think, soldier, that sounds like a or an SE preferring ISTP, but actually the soldiers, in my experience, are NI preferring ISTPs. They are particularly attuned to the timeline I mentioned, and they are interested in participating in it. This is my heritage, this is my destiny, nothing comes between them. I've noticed these ISTPs are usually sixes. They are fascinated by the bigger picture movements across history. And they usually want to attach themselves to it and weave themselves deeper into it, the thing they're fascinated with. They want to be part of it, and they're probably the most confrontational sort of ISTPs. But also the best equipped to traditionally argue, let's say, because soldier ISTPs, sixes, in becoming part of something, they want to justify it to other people. That's part of their participation in the rope. But it's not just history or the bigger picture, which they are interested in, but I've noticed the on-the-ground personal side of history. They aren't just interested in which major forces were doing what, they are interested in what people were doing 2,000 years ago. How did their minds work? What did their days look like? What did they eat? How did they feel? I have no idea why this interests ISTPs, not just soldier ISTPs, ISTPs in general, but I have noticed it. I was raised by an ISTP, so I'll use my mother as my primary example here, as one of the only ISTPs who will put up with my dumb questions. ISTPs, or my mother rather, obsessed with Egypt, obsessed with Rome, always wanted to visit, always wanted to see what people from thousands of years ago would have seen, walked where they walked. And she's obsessed with symbolism from those times, like Ankhs and whatnot. And when you ask, what exactly does this mean to you, or what do you think about these symbols, all this symbolism, there's so much iconography from dead cultures in my mother's wardrobe, what do these things mean to you? She says, I don't know. I don't really know. These cultures fascinate me, so I want them around. She wanted to be an archaeologist. She is one of the most ADHD, non-ADHD people I've ever met. She can't just do nothing. She doesn't mind doing a something sort of nothing, but she can't just do nothing. And usually that something, if not her primary skill/hobby, usually means museums. Let me look at old things. Art galleries, not just with modern paintings, but with historical paintings, old paintings. Let me see them. Seeing them in person is different, not just in texture, but in essence, than it is seeing them online. I need to see them. My mother lives alone in the isolated Northwest now. Barely anyone around. Land, forests for miles and miles. And she stumbled upon these etchings in stones all around the woods. And some of them are marked online, but many of them aren't. And she walks paths or rides horses on paths near these things just to be around them. And she talks about seeing what they might have seen. And she notices things about them that I wouldn't ever have noticed or even thought to notice. As in, why are all of these etchings in stones that are God knows how old all facing the largest body of water in the area? Even if the stones are far away from that body of water, every single one of them faces straight toward the body of water. Why is that? Why is she interested in that? I mean, that's interesting, but there seems to be something else happening there in her noggin that I can see, but I don't know what it is, and she can't quite articulate other than staring at it and being obsessed with it and not knowing why. Then we have the Samurai ISTP. These are the SE preferring ISTPs. And to clarify on these sortings, all the ISTP sorts I mentioned are using all their functions. It's just a preference in general, or a way the ISTP uses that preference daily. So, the Samurai, the Sword Master, right? That doesn't mean their primary skill is swordsmanship or mechanical shit. That's one of the biggest things that mistype actual ISTPs on 16p is, why do their descriptions all focus around mechanical stuff? You could generalize it to suit mastery over a skill rather than saying just technology, and fewer mistypes and misconceptions would happen. Anyway, in mastering these skills, ISTPs usually have an eye in the skill for things other people can't see, and the ISTP can't explain well what it is and how they know. But it makes a difference, because when an ISTP masters a skill to the point they can see things that are there but aren't there and aren't exactly articulatable, they're just the best. They can't be beaten. We'll use a few different real-life ISTP examples here, but we'll start with my mother. My mother has loved horses since she was a kid. Always been around horses, always riding horses, always training horses. And she's developed an eye and a sense for things about not just horsemanship as a skill, but about traits individual horses have, potentials in them, especially related to bloodlines that other people just don't see. For example, my mother bought a mule from this woman for cheap years ago. The woman was selling the mule for cheap because the mule was a problem mule, and she bought her to have some fun running barrels, but the mule just wasn't doing it. The mule just wasn't cut out for it, caused problems, so she's selling her for cheap if anyone wants her. And my mother picked her up and started training her. So I go out there and I'm standing out there with her while she's running her laps around the corral, and I ask her why she bought the mule if the mule wasn't built for running and had a temper, she said, well, this one's going to make money. I don't know who will make money on it. Probably not me, because I'll tell you exactly what will happen. I'll train this mule up to the point it can compete in rodeos, barrel racing, and then I'll need to sell her because something bad will happen, and then someone else will make a lot of money off my work. But, I know this mule will succeed because of her bloodline and her temperament. She's not a bad-tempered mule, she just wants to run, and that witch didn't run her right. That woman was probably training her poorly, riding her poorly, and using her equipment poorly. Look at the way she runs. I look at the way she runs, I look at her shoulders, I look at her legs, and I say, I don't see anything. What are you talking about? She goes, no, just look at the mannerisms. This is a horse, this is a mule, that wants to run. Look at the way she pulls her head down while she's moving. The woman was probably trying to use too much control. She wasn't in a relationship with the animal. She was trying to force her to do things she didn't know how to do. And she almost ruined this mule's potential. But it's still there, and it isn't completely gone, and I can bring it out of her. Watch. And she did. It took about 2 years. I don't know what she did, but the mule loved my mother. It ran quick, and the bad temper went away within like the first 4 months. Apparently, all of the supposed permanent negative traits were gone, only the good remained, and my mother knew how best to bring those positive traits out of the animal in ways other people couldn't. Didn't know how to, didn't see how to. She couldn't explain it, she just did it. And, of course, she did end up selling the mule, and, of course, that mule did end up making a lot of money. My mother would train horses, still does sometimes, and she'll be hanging out with her friends and trying to explain what her friends need to do to get their horses on track, and they just don't get it, and that pisses her off. So they send their horses to my mother to train, and then my mother does exactly whatever needs to happen, and nobody knows how she did it, but she does. She can also tell when a horse is bad, as in, this is a bad investment, this is a bad horse, stay away from it. And then, if people don't listen to her, the same way people tend not to listen even to the understandable advice regarding riding she gives people. They don't listen, and something bad happens with the horse. How? How does this thing, how do you know? I have no idea. She just does. Skill. An eye for what is but isn't seeable. You can see this in other ISTPs as well. Not my favorite ISTP to reference, but he's pretty good. Anthony Cumia. Same sort of thing. Super interested in history, people's individual lives in history. Maybe not the best sides of history, but still. But his talent was humor. And I think Anthony embodies ISTP humor better maybe than anyone. Because it's not overbearing funniness, or I will try to make you laugh. It's more like a duelist standing there in the middle of a fight and sort of just deflecting and dodging with a rapier until, bam, there's an opening, stab. Hits right home, fight's over. That's how Anthony's comedy works. Waiting for the right moment to fire off something so exact and exacting at just the right moment and get a big laugh. And how does he do that? How does he know when or where the openings are? How does he know what to say? Who knows? It just comes to him. He even explains this regarding his comedy in one of the old O&A videos, He has about 4 hours in the tank of talking and joking around, and then by the end of the fourth hour, he's exhausted. He goes home, he worries, God, I don't have anything else to say. How am I going to do my job tomorrow? And then he sleeps, he wakes up, he comes into work, and then magically all that energy and prowess is there. Doesn't need to work on it, it just intuitively comes to him. It just intuitively comes to ISTP samurais, or samurai, right? Is that the plural? No S? And again, in my experience, this goes for most ISTPs. They will gravitate toward a skill, and they'll get so unbelievably good at it, they can't even explain to you what they're doing to be that good at it. They just are. Then you have the ISTP Mystics. I don't exactly know what combination of function or preference of functions they use, but it seems to be all of them, maybe even with a little bit of FE in there. But these are the ISTPs dressed in ragged robes with their hair down and an antenna sticking out of their neck. They are contradictory but usually cool. I don't think I could explain it from a cognitive functions perspective. Maybe I could a little bit. But they seem to be the definitive, intuitive perceiver. They know things, even though they're weird, but they're cool about it. Think Diogenes. You're hanging out with Mystic ISTP, you both are chilling on the couch, and ISTP is just zoning out, looking at a wall, and then looks over at you and says, "Hey, you want to see something cool?" And you go, I guess. And then ISTP says, "Okay, close your eyes." You close your eyes, and then ISTP says, "Open your eyes." And then you open your eyes, and ISTP has parted their hair to reveal a third eye on their forehead that's staring at you. You freak out and you fall back. "Oh, what the fuck is that? Get away from me." And then ISTP jumps from the couch over to the other side of the room, very pleased with themselves. You're thinking, stunned, what the hell is that? And they are just pleased with themselves for goofing on you so well. Then they develop a reputation for knowing things, being weird, being sort of eccentric. An ISTP mystic says, "I'm going off into the mountains." And everyone's like, "Oh, wow, what are you going to do? Are you going to meditate? Are you going to become one with nature? Are you going to practice your blade? What are you going to do? That's crazy." And then ISTP says, "No, the reception is just better out there," for the antenna on their neck. They're doing things that seem mystical, but they aren't very mystical about it, but then it ends up being pretty mystical. They go out into the woods, they're doing their own thing for a while. The intuition waves strike them on their antenna, and then they have this moment of realization, like they're tripping or something, and then they come back down from the mountain and give you the commandments from God. And they hold up. Where did they come from? Who knows? Why do they hold up? Who knows? But they do. And they are, in the present sense. We'll go back to Anthony Cumia for a second. ISTPs are amazing people readers. Anthony was able to, within a short time of knowing Sam Roberts, pinned him as a trouble-causing shit-stirrer, even though on the outside he seemed nice and inviting. Sam is a sociopath, maybe even an actual psychopath, INFJ. He's a really interesting character. But Anthony, ISTP, channeling some of that mysticism, was able to get that read on Sam exactly how much of a snake he was. Exactly how much of a snake he was, and almost exactly how things would play out in the future. Almost immediately. Sees right through it to the core. And with these ISTPs in their reads, you ask them, well, why don't you do something about this? And they go, well, I am chill, just chillin'. Thanks. I don't like thinking that far into the future, especially when it's such a nice day outside, and there is just a lot of fun to be had, a lot of shit to be shot. Shooting the shit. Not... you get what I mean. ISTPs are, I think, the most intuitive type. At least in the way we normally think about intuition. So in conclusion, closing out, if an ISTP gives you advice, if you don't take it, even if you don't take it rather, keep it in your mind, because that advice came from a read, and that read will be a surprise tool we'll see later. And you don't want that, you don't want to be on the receiving end of whatever that warning was. Omens, symbols, the great threads, woven ropes, ISTPs. But that about ribbity wraps this one up. I hope you enjoyed watching, because I certainly enjoyed making it, and I did. I like ISTPs. I want to study them more, but they are difficult to study. They're hard enough to find. ISTPs are statistically pretty rare, and to study them, at least in the way I normally study types, that is difficult. All I can operate from now is from observations, maybe one day in the future, once there's more accessibility and more passion. Like if you enjoyed, because it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes, and comment your thoughts, because I love hearing from you. Are you an ISTP? If so, please tell me what you thought. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what will happen in the next 6 years. I want to study you more. Everyone would, I think. God, everyone is thirsty for ISTPs. If you aren't an ISTP, what do you think about ISTPs? But thanks again for watching, everybody. Really, we have a lot of fun on this channel. So much fun, in fact, you could put it, all the fun, in a small charging case and close the lid and let it charge, and when it's done charging, you can pop it out and have a lot of fun. That's how much fun we have on this channel, and I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.